On this episode of Bobscaping, we're going to reduce the size of this burning bush. This has gotten kind of big next to the garden shed here, so we're going to try to cut that in about half. So here we are in mid-June. Ideally, you would do this sort of a project in probably a month, maybe 2 months ago. Sometime in the spring, right before the new growth starts to develop on this shrub. So what you want to do when you start into this kind of a project, first you want to check the shrub, make sure there's no bee activity. There aren't any hornets in it, any sort of a nest in there where once you start trimming, the bees suddenly attack you. You also want to check for birds' nests. Make sure you don't have any nesting going on. You always hate to destroy a nest. So what we're going to do is cut down into these woody areas, and I'm going to start by cutting right in front of me here. We're using a new GoPro 7 camera. The old GoPro 3 finally gave up the ghost. So here you can see I've just made a couple initial cuts here. And another way to judge height sometimes is by, like, say, waist high. If you hold the loppers about waist high and then make your cuts there. And what we're going to do is try to give this a rounded shape similar to what it has now. I've spread a tarp out here. This is a 10 by 10 mesh tarp. I find these handy for putting clippings on and debris, things like that. And then you can bundle them up and take them to the compost pile. So let's start in here. We'll just continue to make cuts at about that same height. You can always cut off more, but you can't put any back. So if anything, you want to cut things a little longer than you think they should be, and then you can come back in and reduce the size further or cut a little bit deeper. So we're still here in the middle. We're starting to taper to the left here a little bit. Start to taper down. And what we're counting on is for new growth to emerge from this wood here. Here you can see a couple sprouts already there. So we're relying on them to pick up the new growth once this reduction has been completed. So we'll just keep working here. It's a nice day out. The gnats aren't too bad. Sometimes when you're trimming in the summertime, again, it's mid-June, sometimes the gnats can be a real problem. And they like to buzz around your head and try to get in your eyes, things like that. So we're starting to work down these sides a little bit here. And I'm just throwing these branches directly onto the tarp, and that saves cleanup time, which is always nice. Okay. And I always like to, anytime I'm trimming, even after this starts to regrow, I always like to keep some separation between a building and a shrub, which helps deny insects access to that building, or at least easy access. We're going to just let these clippings drop here. Sometimes they're easier to grab than others. Okay. Taper down a little bit here. Go for that gumdrop shape you always hear me talking about on these videos. I'll cut this one about in here. Okay. Cut that about there. And again, this is best done in the spring, right before the new growth begins to push out. That's your ideal time to do this. Okay, so we've gotten down to the basic skeleton, let's say, of the shrub with these main branches. Now we can come back in and make any touch-up cuts and bring in the sides here more if we didn't on the first time around do that. Again, here we're close to this evergreen. We don't like to crowd it, so we'll just come around here and shorten these up, take out any dead wood, get rid of that. And then of course, once this starts to regrow, once there's a new flush of growth that comes up beyond this skeleton, we can again reshape it with shearing or selective pruning, whatever is most desirable. Okay, for this episode of Bobscaping, this is